Hello, my name is Jake Elison, and I'm doing a report on the article called He Fought Halliburton and Won. This is for the Accounting Ethics course at Southern Utah University. So a quick overview of what we're going to go over. We're going to talk about the 7 steps identified by Trevino and Nelson, and then we're also going to talk about Badaracco's take on what to do in an accounting ethical dilemma. And let's get started. So first, the article is about a guy named Tony Menendez. He was a CPA. He worked for Halliburton for a few years. He recognized some improper revenue recognition, and he was largely ignored at the company. But over time, he finally won. So let's get into the steps he took to accomplish the task of being ethical. So the first step Trevino and Nelson identify is to approach your manager. And so I think Tony did a great job at this. He did months of research and trying to figure out inside the company and outside the company and the industry how this revenue should be recognized that he was worried about because it hadn't been earned and things like that. So he knew that something was up. So after he finally decided, this is wrong, there's a problem here, he decided to take it to his immediate manager named Mark McCollum. And so initially Mark, he agreed with him. He said, yep, there's a problem here, this doesn't meet the standards, and so we need to do something about it. But Mark eventually just kind of ignored it, and Mark was a key player later on in continuing to ignore the issue that Menendez had found. So the second step that Trevino and Nelson identify is that we should discuss it with family. Now, this is something that I think we should probably do before we ever approach a manager or something like that. And it doesn't specifically say when Menendez had spoke with his family, but it does say his wife was very supportive and that they had an obligation to do what was right. So I think that's a great thing that he had support from his family, knowing that this is something that was important and something that he needed to do and was right. So the third step that Trevino and Nelson say we need to do is we need to take it to the next level. And so the next level would be up past Mark McCollum, Tony's immediate manager. And so it was taken to the executives. It kind of sounds like even Mark McCollum was on Tony's side at this point, and all of the executives said, yeah, hey, we have a problem here. Great job on identifying this, Tony. We need to do something about it. But they understood that making the change to comply with the standards would be material, and it would require a misstatement, or a restatement of financial statements, excuse me. And they didn't want to do that. Halliburton's a really big public company and with a lot of scrutiny and a lot of eyes watching it. So this isn't something the executives wanted to take on, and so they just kind of ignored it until they could rationalize enough, saying, you know what, that this is actually okay. So Tony moved on with the process, and he took it to an ethics officer. Now, he'd already spoken with executives at the company, so he's already clear at the top, and I'm sure Halliburton has a big HR program and things like that, but Tony went straight to the source of ethics for public companies. He went to the SEC and he filed a complaint. Now we know that the SEC, they put out Sarbanes-Oxley, there's the PCAOB. They're all about getting the correct valuations and statements about companies to lead investors and shareholders correctly. And I can't believe it, but the SEC ignored what was going on. They allowed Halliburton to do their own investigation into it, and they paid a company, and believe it or not, the company said that they were just fine, and they didn't need to do anything. So this was kind of a failure, and it made Menendez have to go on to the next step, which is step 5, to go outside of his chain of command. So this is when he sent an email to the audit committee. Now the audit committee is a part of the board of the company, and they should be independent. They're there to ensure that the company is doing what's right, especially regarding its finances and its financial statements and things like that. And they should be able to act independently for the best of the company. But it was ignored, again, what Menendez had said. And just after this, Mark McCollum had sent out an email to all those underneath him identifying Tony Menendez as the person who filed the complaint with the SEC, and was basically telling other people that this wasn't right and that he was in big trouble. And so that was terrible on the part of Mark McCollum, but it happened. And again, the audit committee did nothing, even though they should be key players in keeping the financial statements correct. So after they disregarded the information, Tony knew he had to go outside. So we know that this had already been done. Tony had already talked with the SEC and filed a complaint that nothing happened. He talked to the audit committee, who should be independent of the company and things like that, but they again did nothing. So finally, he took Halliburton to court with all the evidence and things like that, and it took a lot of time. He had to have retrials, and he had to go to multiple different courts, but finally a jury sided in his favor, and he finally won. So, which is great. It took him a long time, but he finally did it. And now it was him winning the battle was actually after he had left the company. This is the last step that Trevino and Nelson identified. Tony left in 2006, and it wasn't until 2011 that it was finally all situated. So even 5 years after he had left the company, he was still battling this in court and everything like that, trying to get it resolved and to set the record straight. So Tony did a great job at following the outline of what to do, and he eventually conquered, so that's great. There's also some other good outcomes that came from this. And now to move on to Badaracco's view, I think Tony did a great job of practicing patience. He let it go overnight. He actually let it go overnight for a few months, and he did all that research, and he really, knew that something was wrong here. And so he met with his boss, and I don't think Tony was bombastic or loud. I think he was well respected in the company, and that it was a view that was correct, and that he was trying to help the company do what was right. And so I think that's why his boss, Mark McCollum, and the executives all said, yeah, this is a real problem, and it's something that we need to take care of. But they eventually just ignored him. So I think Tony did a great job at not trying to enforce and not going straight to the papers, but trying to make a change within the company, even though it didn't happen. And so I think he just did a great job of picking his battles. He took it one step at a time, and eventually he was able to overcome. It took a lot of determination and willpower on his side, but he eventually did it. So what we talked about was the 7 steps that Trevino and Nelson had identified, and we talked about Badaracco's take on how to deal with ethical dilemmas. And I think this was rewarding for Menendez. It took over a decade, but he eventually got it taken care of, and he got a new career path out of it. He became a certified fraud examiner, and he worked doing that for a long time. So Tony Menendez was a great example of a whistleblower and how to take the process correctly and really make a change. So grateful I was able to read about this, and I thank you for watching my presentation.